abide you.
I'm going to be honest, Jacob is, in more ways than one, a hard character to root for. I wrestled with this a lot this week. And if we're being completely honest with ourselves, I also think that we have more to learn from Jacob, that there might be enough similarities between him and us, more than we'd like to admit to ourselves. And so for the next several weeks, we'll be following the unfolding story of Jacob's liminal wilderness journey. Right? And as we journey alongside him in the coming weeks, we'll seek to uncover how God might be at work, not only transforming him, but also us. But let me back up a moment first to make sure we're on the same page, because this is a big story, a long story, and we've only gotten part of it this morning. Let's state the obvious first. Jacob's life is a mess. We're on the same page? Just before this morning's scripture reading, we realized that the family situation is even messier than we know. That this isn't the beginning of all the dysfunction. This is kind of its climax. As Genesis tells us, Jacob is the younger twin to his brother Esau. In colloquial terms, Genesis says Jacob is a mama's boy and Esau is his daddy's boy. As the boys grew up, chapter 25 says, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, a hairy, burly, manly man, it basically goes on to add. While Jacob, it says, was content to stay at home among the tents. That is, with the women tending the home, which is to imply that he was more effeminate by our traditional gender norms. Right? So from the beginning, they are established as being profoundly different, and no doubt there would be a lot of friction because of it. After this introduction to the two brothers, the first story of them recounts how once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the open country from an unsuccessful hunting expedition, famished. We're not talking hungry or even hangry. We're talking starvation, the story implies. And I'm imagining him almost crawling back to the house, just grateful to find someone in the home. Please, brother, feed me, he pleads Jacob. Let me have some of this stew. He's on the verge of collapse. And Jacob, seeing his brother in desperation, responds not with compassion, but with manipulation. A perfect opportunity to take advantage of him. First, he insists, sell me your birthright. What? As the oldest son, Esau was, in the cultural customs of his day, he was the one who is set to inherit the bulk of all that is his father's, Isaac's, upon his passing, which we hear in this story is coming up pretty soon. That means land, possessions, wealth, it would all go to him. And so Esau, knowing that the long-term picture of an inheritance doesn't mean a whole lot if you die today, he says, whatever, fine, just give me some food. But that's not enough. Jacob insists, swear to me, make an oath, so that you can't take it back once I've fed you. Fine, I swear. And so it is that Jacob secured his future, his wealth, at the expense of his brother. So needless to say, they only grow more and more hostile toward each other after that, culminating in this morning's scripture reading where, with the help of his mom, Rebekah, again, Jacob is his mom's favorite, Jacob adds insult to injury as the two of them scheme and manipulate, and he lies his way to stealing not only Esau's inheritance, but also now his blessing. That is, as the oldest son, Esau was still set to become the family patriarch upon his father's passing. Right? Stealing the blessing means that not only has Jacob taken Esau's material inheritance, but that Jacob has also now become the grand decision maker, the sort of clan chief of the family, if you will. Meaning that Esau will also have to serve him. We'll have to follow his decisions. Whatever he decides goes. Everybody in the family looks to the patriarch. So Jacob has all but cut Esau out of the family, has all but cut him off from a fully viable future of his own. And you might say, in some sense, some twisted sense, that Jacob has found a way to climb the ladder of success measured by whatever certain worldly standards. So what if he, like, many powerful and wealthy people today, had to rely on a bit of corruption and deception and backstabbing to get there, right? He had made it to the top in the way that the system works. He was there. And so at this point, you'd think that Jacob, like today's billionaires, perhaps, would be off celebrating with a flight into outer space, right? A little victory lap, just to gloat. Jacob had it all. And if he didn't, he could get it. This was supposed to be as good as it gets, right? Except that now his brother Esau is out for murder. And so instead of leaving on a jet plane like a billionaire, Jacob is on the run like a fugitive with little more than the clothes that he has on his back. That is, instead of entering a time of stability, instead of enjoying his newfound status and privilege and wealth, Jacob finds himself in the wilderness, literally and metaphorically. He is thrust into a liminal season. He's on the run. Where exactly am I even going? How will I ever make it there? Will I be welcomed? What if my father dies while I'm away? Will I ever return home? Ever see my family again? Not to mention be able to claim the inheritance, the blessing. If I'm not the family patriarch, then who am I? If I'm cut off from my family, whose am I? To whom do I belong? What's my purpose? Jacob is there in the thick of the wilderness. And as he finally gets to a point where he begins to feel like his brother might not be hot on his heels, as he finally slows down, he finds himself in the middle of nowhere. And I imagine him finally breaking down as it all hits him, falling to his knees on the dry desert soil, screaming out at the cloudless sky. And as the screams turn to sobs, the echo of his voice across the desert valleys and plateaus gives way to the voices of shame tearing through his mind and soul, the same voices of worthlessness and rejection that test and terrorize Jesus in his own wilderness journey. Earlier this week, I was watching a short video by Rob Bell, the former megachurch pastor, you maybe know that name, where he reflects on how we as a society, we make life all about climbing these perceived ladders of success. Beginning in junior high, like middle school, he says, when our teachers and parents, they say to us, hey, you need to get good grades, because in high school, your grades are really going to matter. And he says, as middle schoolers, we don't really know what that means, but it sounds serious. So we're like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. We'll focus. We'll get good grades. And then in high school, the same thing happens, right? You need to get good grades because this is going to go on your transcript, and you need to get into college. And then in college, you not only need to get good grades, but you need to get good enough grades to get into graduate school, or you need to get that good internship so that you get that real-world experience, right? Get your foot in the door. And then you get a job, he says, and they take you into this giant cubicle farm. And they say, now you see way over there, with that door and the windows along the wall, the outside, if you work here, you stay here, you work hard, maybe do well for 11 years, that could maybe be yours. And then after 12 years, you get one of those, and you're driving to work one day, and this existential elevator drops within you, or smacks you over the head, this terrifying realization, this question, wait, this is it? What was the point of all of this? That is, at every single stage of our lives, society was leaning a ladder up against a wall for us and telling us to climb. Climb and you'll be satisfied. If you get to that next level, then you'll be happy. And so we get really good at climbing ladders. The problem is we've never stopped to ask ourselves if the ladder was leaned up against the right building. That is, we never stop to ask ourselves why we're climbing that ladder anyways. That ladder to college, that ladder to marriage, that ladder to having kids, that ladder to working 60 hours a week, to getting that big house, to getting the toys, or. We just do it. But instead of satisfying, at the end of the day, at some point we realize it's nothing more than a hamster wheel. Right? So Jacob has climbed to the top of what's supposed to be that top floor, that corner office, the equivalent of his day, the floor with all the security that promises to make him happy. And instead, what does he have? But a life of uncertainty, driven by fear, with no place to lay his head but a rock. Jacob has quite literally hit rock bottom. I'm pretty proud of that joke, so it's okay if you laugh. That's not a laugh track, that was real. It is here in the wilderness, when Jacob is most vulnerable, that the most astonishing, most life-altering, vision-altering thing happens. When he is finally exhausted from running and the shame and screaming out at the sky, Jacob lays down in a barren landscape, which is pretty much a symbol for his state in life right now, and he falls asleep. Suddenly, he's jolted by a dream that's as real as it is vivid, a ladder to the skies, a stairway to heaven, with angels ascending and descending, and suddenly a voice from beside him speaks a word of presence and promise. When Jacob is at his lowest, feeling worthless, alone, rejected, the voice of God says, I am with you. I will watch over you. I will lead you out and bring you back. I will give you a future, Jacob. You are more than your past. Jacob awakens then, both literally and at a deeper spiritual level. His vision is transformed. As he looks around and says, surely God is in this place, and I just didn't realize it. How awesome is this space? Yes, this place that just a moment ago held for him the voices of shame and torment, whose barrenness was a symbol for his current state of affairs. This rock bottom place is now awesome, is filled with wonder and fills him with reverence. He would describe the wilderness with the same single word as one seeing their grandchild for the first time. Wow. The stone that effectively symbolized his bottoming out the night before, Jacob now uses as the foundation of a pillar that symbolizes God's presence here in the wilderness when I was at my lowest low. Right? Jacob is still in the same place. And Lord knows, as we'll see in the weeks ahead, he has a long journey ahead of him. He's not out of the wilderness yet. He's just beginning. But that's just it. The wilderness has become for him a place of holy disruption, has disrupted his previously scheduled programming, his heretofore mode of operating, his lies and deceptions and scheming to get what he wants and needs. It is precisely this reality, the vulnerability and openness of liminal space, of being in the wilderness, as Richard Rohr reminds us, that allows room for something genuinely new to happen. The wilderness is where we are most teachable, often because we are most humbled. And so while we, like Jacob, try our mightiest to run from it, the work of God and of authentic spirituality and human development is to keep us in the liminal spaces, in the wilderness, as long as it takes for us to learn something essential and new. And it's only when Jacob is finally vulnerable, is broken open and at the end of himself, when he accepts his powerlessness to control his life and give himself the future that he wants and surrenders, rather than duplicitously scheming or controlling or climbing ladders, it's only then that he realizes he doesn't have to climb the ladder at all. God has come down to him. His vision, his perspective, and understanding change. He doesn't have to make his way to God. God is alongside him the whole time. See, the hard spiritual truth that we're grappling with this Lent is that the wilderness, these liminal seasons of transition, of uncertainty, as wild and dangerous and disorienting as they aren't something to just get through or run from. We can live in denial, but that doesn't make them go away. Instead, they are the means by which we are jolted out of our autopilot, out of how we've always done it. They are where holy disruptions can take place, where we can fall apart and entrust ourselves to a God who puts us back together like an artist into a mosaic. They are wombs, and we must remain in utero until we are ready to be birthed into a new beginning. Friends, what wilderness do you find yourself in? Surely our war-torn, pandemic-stricken world, our church, not just us as federated, but the church at large, we are in the midst of all kinds of wildernesses. Rather than running from the disorientation and the grief, from the questions and the uncertainty, from the changes, how in facing it might we be disrupted from patterns and thoughts and habits that are not life-giving? How might we discover God's life-giving presence anew? My prayer for you, for us, is that you can trust your wilderness to be the womb of a new beginning. And that, like Jacob, along the way, you would know God, our divine midwife, delivering you. May it be so. For your own blessing for the blessing of all the world.
Where can